Hello, everyone. This is Lydia, and I am here because you requested to see more of what an actual hair tissue mineral analysis looks like and the information that you can get from this test. It's very vast and broad and amazing what you can learn about your current health from this assessment tool. And it's quite like playing chess. It's not a simplistic test to read at all. So you definitely want to have someone help you work through the information. But it's very broad because it's going to show you so many aspects of your overall health that you really can kind of create a very thorough game plan to get started really supporting your health at a deeper level. All right, so your practitioner is going to hopefully use the information in the test as well as a really thorough consultation with you where they take a good health history. They're really focused on your health goals and what it is you're trying to accomplish to help you create a plan that can really start to kind of unravel some of your health concerns as well as to get you more towards your health goals. And I love this assessment tool so much because it's such a huge, broad insight into the body and where it's currently at. And it's so cool because it's very cumulative as well as preventative. And it's like a deep dive into your biochemistry. And the mineral system is very complex, but it's very important. And when you are looking at a hair analysis, you're going to be looking at some key things. There's a lot of stuff on here. You really don't want to worry about every little thing that shows up. You want to allow your practitioner to help you focus on where to start. And I like to tell people that there are no bad hair tests. There's no bad ones. We're not trying to change numbers exactly. I mean, yes, when the ratios shift and move and things like that look better and get closer to normal, of course, that's wonderful. But a lot of people get hung up on the numbers, and my focus really to help you feel better so that your symptoms are improving, your body's getting more stable, more capable of handling stress, and over time you heal at a deeper level. Okay? And the numbers aren't going to always show up perfectly in the acceptable range as quickly as you might like. So as long as you're, really shifting in your health, we're going to be kind of, let's call it peeling back the onion layers, so to speak, when you go through hair analysis tests repeatedly. Okay, so the very first thing that you're going to want to understand are these significant ratios on the second page of your lab graph if you're getting a hair analysis through Trace Elements Lab. Now, I only recommend Trace Elements, which is TEI, and Analytical Research Labs. The reason for this is because they are the only two labs I know of to date that do not wash the hair sample in harsh chemicals, thereby affecting the readings. And so I do not recommend or use any other lab at this time, okay? So these are the only two. And I prefer Trace Elements Lab simply because they have a few more markers that they actually test over Analytical Research Labs, and so that makes it a little bit more valuable to have that information. All right, so the very first thing that you want to assess are these ratios because the ratios represent homeostatic balances in your body. Now, what that means is different kind of systems of your body, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And so with that information about each kind of system or balance within your body, we can really hone in on, appropriate macronutrients, helping you target the support you need for each area of your body and really create a plan to work on that makes the most sense for where you're at. So it's really cool because we're looking at food, we're looking at lifestyle, we're looking at supplemental support, we're looking at whatever detox your body can handle at this time. So many things can be targeted just from working with a practitioner to help you through the information you glean from this test. Okay, so that's a big reason why I love it. I love to start everyone out with it because honestly, it's so much information in one fell swoop that we can get started with. And you know, there's going to be some really cool stuff that I'm going to tell you even more in a minute about the individual minerals and the heavy metals. But for now, I'm going to talk a little bit about these ratios. So this first ratio over here on the bottom left, Ca/P, stands for calcium to phosphorus. And this represents kind of your autonomic nervous system, which if you don't know what that is, it's kind of the balance of your two nervous system, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. And our body really wants to be able to go between those two very well and utilize them both. Now, sometimes your body tends to be in more of one state versus the other and not regulate them very effectively. So right here, you can see the acceptable range is in the white area. If it comes down really low, that's someone who's in more of a fight or flight mode, you know, like you're really stressed out and you're burning the midnight oil and you're just kind of in a fast metabolism and stressed out. That's what we call fast oxidation or fight or flight mode. And the sympathetic nervous system is more dominant. And there can be, you know, certain symptoms that arise from that. So a practitioner is able to kind of really educate the client, you know, with that information in mind of, you know, kind of strategies and lifestyle stuff and different support that they may need to help calm the sympathetic nervous system down. And then when it gets above this 3.6 and it goes really high, which I see them sky high all the time, that means someone's more of parasympathetic, but not necessarily a healthy parasympathetic, more of just like a really slowed down state. And we call that slow oxidation, where the body just has very little overall reserve or energy. It's kind of more burned out. And this makes it where your body just is going to prioritize survival. And so a lot of things slow down. Digestion slows down, detox slows down, energy slows down, everything slows down. And it just makes it really hard to be at your best health when you're in that state. And your diet is going to really matter because you're going to have a harder time really getting energy from your food, breaking down your food. And so, you know, kind of understanding what macronutrients will really serve you best is important because it can really make a change for a slow oxidizer and a fast oxidizer to kind of target what macronutrients they really need. Okay, so that's just a general overview of that ratio alone, and it's really helpful to see because sometimes people are trying to eat a certain dietary framework. I'll give you an example because I think keto is really popular right now, where it's like a super low carb diet and higher fat. And a slow oxidizer is not going to be able to do that very well. That's going to actually make it really hard on a slow oxidizer. It's actually better for a fast. The thing to know, though, is the majority of people are slow oxidizers, and typically women. And so, you know, that might not be the best dietary framework for them to do a keto diet or even you know, more of a GAPS diet, which is can be more of a high fat diet too. So the fat is going to be really hard for their body to break down and digest, even though they're going to need some. And so it's just important to really see these nuances within each individual's results to really start to hone in on, you know, what kinds of foods you could be eating and to help you out for now. Because we really can't listen to all these dietary templates that are out there and assume that they are suitable for everyone. It's really important to help you to know more what works for you. And that's the great thing about this, is that's one thing that you can really start to target and make change towards, okay? All right, so the next ratio is Na/K. This stands for sodium to potassium. And this is actually one of the most important ratios on the hair test. It actually is so critical. So it's one that I spend probably the most time with everyone. In fact, honestly, we could just look at this ratio alone and kind of run with the information from that, because it's tied to so many things. And the sodium and potassium levels in your body really need to be tightly regulated, because one's intracellular and one's extracellular, and we need our cells to be firing appropriately. So we need this balance to be really close and good. So when you see this ratio in this range, that's great. A lot of times slow oxidizers they look normal, but eventually they kind of tank because there's a lot tied to it. But generally speaking, you really want to see this ratio in this nice white area. When it gets really low, the body's starting to break down. You've got adrenal fatigue, you've got blood sugar problems, you've got liver issues, possible immune issues, copper issues, and so on and so forth. When it gets really high, it's usually an inflammatory marker, often can correlate with people maybe have autoimmune issues or a current health flare where their body is struggling and they have a lot of inflammation. So we can use this ratio to really kind of dig deeper and know where someone's at and really start to support them a little bit more effectively with that information alone. And your practitioner really should start to ask a lot more questions once they see if this is way out of range. They can really target questions to ask you to dig deeper and make sure they're really assessing this fully. Okay, the next ratio is calcium to potassium. This is Ca/K, and this is the thyroid ratio. And this one usually alarms people like crazy when they see it, because everyone's concerned about their thyroid these days for very good reason. And what this ratio represents is not how much hormone you're producing or anything like that. You certainly need specifically to look at a thyroid panel to understand what your hormone production is. However, let's pretend that this person's thyroid hormone production is perfectly adequate and there's nothing wrong at all. Well, what this information shows us is the ability of the hormone to get into the cell. So it's more of the cellular response to thyroid hormone. So when we see it elevated like this one is, because we see normal in this range here, and this one's showing 54, which is off the chart, right? Well, basically what that means is this person has thyroid hormone resistance, and their thyroid hormone isn't getting into their cells effectively. So they have a little bit of likely some hypothyroid symptoms. Now, you know, sometimes people freak out at this and they think it's horrible. And the truth of the matter is we have a lot to unravel, and we can really improve this immensely. And someone can feel a lot better in a short amount of time. But the important thing to know is, you know, if a client or an individual has a lot of thyroid symptoms, and they haven't gotten their thyroid checked, then, you know, we can certainly say, hey, you really probably should go get your thyroid checked, get a full panel, and take a deeper assessment so you can make sure that you're getting enough hormone, right? You have adequate hormone production, and then we can start to work on getting it into the cells better too. So there's a lot you can kind of start to really target once you see these markers. Zinc to copper is a ratio that I don't use too much on the hair test because we cannot see how copper is being regulated. So I usually recommend a blood panel, but I look more at the individual zinc and copper myself, and then some other markers help me assess zinc and copper as well. But generally speaking, if someone has a severe copper imbalance, I will have them do further testing. But generally, the first hair test, we can get an overall idea of where someone's at and really start to support them right away, even without that further testing. The next ratio is Na/Mg. This is sodium to magnesium. This is an adrenal ratio. And normal is 4, in between 2 and 6. And here's the perfect, beautiful point. Most people have very, 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 very low adrenal marker. And so what this means is, it actually can mean a lot of things. And you still don't know what your adrenal hormones are doing exactly. So again, if you want to know your hormone production, that's a whole nother functional test. However, when we look at this, we can know, you know what, this person needs some overall support to help their adrenal function, their HPA axis, and likely they are really struggling to have adequate detoxification. So this ratio is really helpful to see. A lot of people, when they see it, it's very eye-opening, and they start to take things a little more seriously to really support their health. So all of this information can just be very, it's so great when you can have ways to measure your health, because it really helps you when you visualize it. And so the very first time I did this myself, it was like, holy cow, this is so helpful. It can be a little hard to see it if you are looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, everything's so bad, which a lot of people will do. But again, there's no bad hair test. It's just what it is. And it's a starting point for everyone. So I don't like to call it bad. It just is what it is. And it's so great because it can really help you to have some clarity about where your body's at and kind of what you need to be doing, to support yourself. And it helps you take it a little more seriously. All right. That said, the next ratio is Ca/Mg. This is calcium and magnesium. This ratio can kind of tell us more about someone's blood sugar balance or their cardiovascular health, and sometimes even their lifestyle too, because both of those things are very tied to, lifestyle. So if someone's burning the midnight oil all the time or has a really stressed out life, their blood sugar is usually off too. But there are other markers in the hair test that can affect your blood sugar. So this isn't like a hard and fast, hey, your blood sugar is this or whatever. But generally speaking, if it's in this white area, your body's regulating better or effectively. I like to see it under 10 and above 3. Sometimes when people stays really high, I will say, listen, next time you go to your doctor, you're going to want to maybe look into your A1C, just make sure you're not in a pre-diabetic range, things like that. There's a lot we can glean from each marker though, and we can really dig a little bit more each time, because you can't do everything at once. You can't take one hair test and fix all your problems, or even begin to tackle everything that's in the first test that you get. It's very cool to start to get a very broad plan to help you, and then you can keep kind of supporting yourself, because none of us can go out and get it all right the first time. Then the last one is Fe/Cu. This is iron to copper, and this is kind of an infection indicator. Doesn't mean you have one per se, but if it's low, you may be more inclined to have some type of a viral possible infection going on, especially if it sticks around for a while, this ratio. And when it's elevated, maybe there's bacterial infection potentially. So, we don't diagnose with this. We don't say, okay, well, you have bacterial infection. But if it's high, we could start to ask questions. We can start to dig deeper. We can try to see if there could be a connection. And there's been many times where I've looked at this information and someone stays really low repeatedly. We eventually may find out that they have a chronic infection because of a root canal, or they have, chronic Epstein-Barr virus or something like that. So it can be really helpful to kind of dig deeper in ways that you may not have ever thought of if your practitioner is really educated and really a good detective. Okay, so those are the ratios. So that's pretty cool, right? That you can get all this really good insight to dig deeper and kind of get some clarity around your health and create a plan. Now, there's a lot more information, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but I want to show you the nutritional elements, okay? So we've got calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, copper, zinc, phosphorus, iron, manganese, chromium, selenium, boron, cobalt, molybdenum, and sulfur. On a first-time hair test, I tend to focus on the first 7 because the first 4 are really important to regulate, and then copper and zinc can be tricky. Phosphorus can correlate with digestion and protein assimilation. And so those 7 are very key to target first. And then we can kind of consider some of this other stuff, especially if it connects to the current person's health goals. Often I'll look at selenium as well, especially if someone has mercury showing. But generally, I'll just look at these first 7 because they're very important to start to regulate those first. Then we have your heavy metals, your toxic elements, okay? And you can see on this one that there's none showing. Well, remember that just because they're not showing doesn't mean someone doesn't have them. It could mean that their body can't eliminate them effectively and that they're hidden deep within the body. So this can be an indicator that they're a very poor detoxifier and they need support getting their detoxification pathways open in an effective and gentle way that they can handle as an individual with their current health where it's at. And that can take some time depending on the person. And if there was an elevation, let's say the aluminum was like up here or something, that would likely indicate a current exposure, not always, but it can. And so your practitioner will start to dig and ask you questions and, you know, try to find out if it's a current exposure or what it could be coming from. And then they'll tell you ways to get started to help eliminate it. They'll also clue you into where it could be showing up, as well as what symptoms you could experience with aluminum toxicity. All right, and same goes for any of these heavy metals. Typically, we don't see something like beryllium or antimony showing up too much. Usually there's always some aluminum. Usually there's always some arsenic. And then mercury, cadmium, and lead can show up here and there. Mercury is very common, especially if people are eating seafood frequently. So, you know, then some education will need to occur about choosing seafood. So you can avoid that. Cadmium is always going to be an issue if you are a smoker or were a smoker or were exposed long-term to secondhand smoke. Even if it doesn't show right away, you know, you can assume you have cadmium toxicity. Lead doesn't always show up either, but when it does, a lot of times it's because someone was recently exposed to it, and typically it's because of some type of a home remodel. And there's always going to be lots of possible variances, so we have to ask a lot of questions, do some detective work, and really try to find the source if we can, and sometimes we can't. So we just support the body and really try to help the person to clear these things effectively. We do not recommend chelation. That is too harsh and too fast. A lot of times heavy metals can go into binding sites and do an actual job in the body in place of a mineral. So you don't want to just try to strip them and rip them out fast. Chelation is really more for someone who's severely ill, and that's not in my scope of practice. So I really can't even recommend it. And I don't. So, and then uranium is often elevated in different locations. Uranium can be higher in certain areas than others. So that one comes up quite a bit. A lot on the West Coast, certain areas I've noticed, but we have, you know, ways that we can start to help reduce it, as well as help you understand where it could be coming from. And sometimes we can't, like I said, we cannot understand where it's coming from. So we just have to help the person to have effective strategies to reduce it. And usually on a second hair test, we see this one coming down very nicely, almost always, unless it's, you know, they are just being exposed to it repeatedly. But even so, I see it come down pretty nicely. All right. So that is a really broad overview. I didn't even go into the nutritional elements too much. I could do that in another video, but I wanted to give you guys some more insider information so you know more about the what. What the heck is hair testing? What is hair analysis? What can it do for me? Why should I even consider it? Because it's just so complex, and I think it's hard for people to like really comprehend what it's all about. And even when someone will see it the first time, they'll be like, what on earth does this mean? And the good news is you don't have to know what it all means. You get to have support with someone who can help you understand it and help you start to implement sustainable change, to use the information within this test to make changes in your life and to feel better. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point. So it's not really the kind of test you want to do if you're just curious, because it takes time to kind of unravel these patterns and these different ratios and things like that. So it's really actually a great assessment tool to work with so repeatedly, so you can really dig deeper and unwind some health complications that maybe you have or symptoms, or really support your ability to detox and deal with the heavy metal piece, because no other test really digs into the heavy metal piece from the get-go like this. So you're really getting information about kind of what foods you need to be eating, what type of support you need to increase your metabolism and energy, how to support your digestion, how to support some gentle detox strategies, and even help your immune system. So my goodness, the value of this is so immense. So I love it for that reason. And that's why I've been using it for these past several years, and it's just been such a great tool. So if you think that this is something that you would like to dive into and really get more insight about your health, I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up. I'm going to actually include a link for you. I am currently, and this is April 30th, so this is a short time offer. I'm offering the hair analysis along with my 30 Days to Vibrant Health program, so that you have even more to work on if you really want to kickstart your health, if you really want to take the next month to dive in deeper. I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it's spring, it's almost summer. I really want to do something to move forward in my health so that I feel better, so that I can enjoy the warmer months of the year and go on vacation with my family. I think a lot of people are feeling the urgency right now. And if that's you, I would love to support you. If you feel like this is something that you're ready to do, you are welcome to get started and just use that link. So I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, you are welcome to reach out to me and let me know. And I will be back in the future with more videos for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.